Hello everyone, I'm Uz and today I'm gonna talk about the pages between 170 and 177. Let's get started. So, what's a sequence? Whenever we put a new item to the table, we want its primary key to be unique, and sequences are ways to ensure that by returning a random number each time we call it. But how do we create one? Well, those are the steps that we gotta follow to create one, and I'm gonna go through each one of them separately. The first thing that you gotta do is to specify the sequence name, and in order to do so you gotta type down create sequence and specify the sequence name. If you wanted to, you can specify the schema name as well, but it's not mandatory. The next thing to specify is the interval between the sequence numbers. You can do that by typing down increment by and specifying the value, and that values can be both positive and negative. If it's positive, then the sequence is descending, and if it's negative, then the sequence is descending. If the value is not specified, by default it will be equal to 1. And one important thing to note down is that intervals must be smaller than maximum value minus minimum value. The next thing to specify is the first number in our sequence, and we do that by typing down start with, then specifying the first number. If it's not defined, it will be by default equal to the minimum value. Of course, I'm saying that by assuming that the sequence is in an ascending order. If it's in a descending order, then by default it's gonna be equal to the maximum value instead. So in order to specify the maximum value, you gotta type down maximum value and specify the value. And one important thing is that maximum value must be equal or greater than the first number and minimum value. And if you don't want to specify one, we can use no max value instead. And if you do so, Oracle will specify those values for us. And those values will be different for ascending sequences and descending sequences. Just like the same, minimum value is pretty much the same, but instead of maximum, it's minimum. Basically, in order to specify the minimum value, we gotta type down minimum value and specify the value. And again, that value must be equal or less than the first number and maximum value. And again, if we don't want to specify one, Oracle will donate a minimum value for descending or ascending sequences. So, one other thing that we should specify is that if you want the sequence to cycle or not. If you want it to, then basically once the sequence reaches to the maximum value, it will generate the minimum value next, which means that once it reaches to the last element, it's gonna start from the beginning. Just like the same, if the sequence is descending, once the sequence reaches the minimum value, it will generate the maximum value next. Then, if we don't want the sequence to cycle, we can use no cycle instead. Then we got the catch value to specify. It's basically the amount of the memory that we want to pre-allocate for faster access. The minimum possible catch value is 2, and the maximum catch value can be calculated by the following formula. If a system failure happens, all of the catched sequence values will be lost, but the ones that used in the previous SQL commitments will stay though. And if you don't want to specify the catch, we can use no catch instead. In that case, the values of the sequence won't be pre-allocated. If neither catch or no catch is used, by default Oracle catches the first two in a sequence of numbers. And the last thing that we could specify is the order. And order ensures that Oracle will generate a sequence of numbers in order of requests. And if we don't want that, we can use no order instead. And this option is by default. Yeah. So we got two functions. One is curval and the other one is nextVal. Curval basically returns the current value of the sequence, and nextVal returns the next value in our sequence. One thing to remember is that curval cannot be used before nextVal is used. Let's see an example now. So we got a sequence called IDSec, and the interval between the values are 10. It's gonna start by 10, and the minimum value again is 10. The maximum value is 100. It's gonna cycle, and our catch is 2. So since we cannot call the curve wall before calling the next wall, we gotta do it at first, and when we do so, it's gonna return the first value, which is 10. Then if we call curve wall again, we're gonna get 10. From now on, if we keep calling the next wall in a loop, it will keep returning the values by incrementing them to us, and once it reaches the 100, if we call next wall again, since the 100 is the maximum value, it will go back to the start and start from the 10 again till it reaches 100. Then we got synonyms. So what's a synonym? Synonyms are basically things that can be used as alternative names to tables, views, sequences, and other database objects. And how do we create one? In order to create one, you gotta type down create public synonym, and public is not mandatory, by the way. Then we gotta specify the synonym name. We gotta type down the schema name and its table, which is also equal to the which is the same with the synonym name basically. Let's see an example. So we got we got students, we got grades. If we want to reach those, so we create a public synonym called grades, which will represent the student.grades. So instead of typing down student.grades each time, we can reach them by simply typing down grades now. And if we want to drop that, we could just type down drop synonym grades and it will drop. So what's a data dictionary? Data dictionaries are read-only sets of tables full of information about the databases. Here are some commonly used data dictionaries like user catalog, user objects, user tables, user top columns, etc. And finally, we got user catalog, which is a data dictionary that can be used to list the tables, views, and the sequences. That's all I'm going to talk about. Thank you for your time.